What's up, guys? It's John from Christian Student Union, back for more Romans 8. Today we're going to be talking about verses 14 through 17. So I'm going to read that really quick. If you have a Bible, you want to pull that out and follow along. It's a great idea. So, Paul writes, "For those who are led by the Spirit of God are the children of God. The Spirit you received does not make you slaves so that you live in fear again. Rather, the Spirit you received brought about your adoption to sonship. And by him we cry, 'Abba, Father.' The Spirit himself testifies with our spirit that we are God's children. Now if we are children, then we are heirs, heirs of God and co-heirs with Christ, if indeed we share in his sufferings, in order that we may also share in his glory." Okay, so in these 4 verses, he's kind of wrapping up his previous thoughts about how we have life in the Spirit, all about the Spirit versus the flesh, and how because we believe in Jesus, we have God's Spirit and are set free from death. And he's also kind of segueing into what he's going to talk about in the next few verses. So let's start in verse 14. "For those who are led by the Spirit of God are the children of God." What does it mean to be led by the Spirit of God? Well, we can look back at some stuff we've already read. Verse 4, Romans 8, verse 4, says, "In order that the righteous requirement of the law might be fully met in us, who do not live according to the flesh, but according to the Spirit." I think being led by the Spirit of God means not living for ourselves, but living for God. Living how God would want us to live, fulfilling the plan that God has for our life instead of doing what we want. And it says, "For those who are led by the Spirit of God are the children of God." This is the main point of this paragraph, is through the Spirit we are children of God, and because we are children, we are heirs of God. We have an inheritance from God. So here he's kind of talking about the first connection. Through the Spirit of God, we are children of God. And if we live for God, if we believe in Jesus, then we're children of God. Now, that is kind of incredible. We are children of God. There's an almighty, all-powerful God, and it's our dad. Now, just think about that. He loves us so much that he's willing to make us members of his family. What is he not going to do for us? He's willing to do anything for us. And in fact, Paul talks a little bit about that later. But the point is, God is our dad. If we believe in Jesus, we are in God's control, and God is going to take care of us and protect us. So verse 15, "The Spirit you received does not make you slaves, so that you live in fear again." So this is kind of referencing what he was talking about in the previous chapter, chapter 7, talking about how we are all slaves to sin, but the Spirit you received does not make you slaves. If we put our trust in Jesus, we are no longer slaves to sin. This says, "does not make you slaves so that you live in fear again." What does it mean, live in fear again? Well, before we were Christians, God's wrath, God's judgment were on us because we had all sinned, and there was nothing to bring us close to God. And we deserved his wrath. And that's really scary. If there's an almighty and all-powerful God and you're not on his side, that is really scary. Rather, the Spirit you received brought about your adoption to sonship. Not only are we not on his bad side anymore, not only are we not separated from God, but now we are in his family. We are adopted. Now, by him, we cry, Abba, Father. So, Abba is an Aramaic word meaning father, and it's the same word Jesus used in the Garden of Gethsemane before he went to the cross when he was praying. He said, Abba, Father, when he was praying and asking God to take away what he was going to have to go through. That's the same word Jesus used. So we are adopted into God's family, and we have the full rights of being God's sons. Jesus is God's son, and he used that same term. We have the full rights of sonship. We are God's. It's not kind of halfway, like we're adopted, but we're not really like actually children. No, we are fully sons of God, sons and daughters. So the Spirit himself testifies with our spirit that we are God's children. So since we are adopted by God, that affects all parts of who we are. Testifies with our spirit. That's like the deepest part of our being is our spirit. That we are God's children. Now, if we are children, then we are heirs, heirs of God and co-heirs with Christ, if indeed we share in his sufferings, in order that we may also share in his glory. So, since it's not like a hypothetical, what if we're children? It's like, now since we are children, we are heirs of God and co-heirs with Christ. What do we inherit from God? We inherit eternal life in heaven. That's our inheritance. 1 Peter also talks about this. Peter says, in his great mercy, he has given us new birth into a living hope through the resurrection of Jesus Christ from the dead, and into an inheritance that can never perish, spoil, or fade. This inheritance is kept in heaven for you. We inherit eternal life with God, and nothing is going to take away that inheritance. That is a promise from God. He always keeps his promises. We can be 100% confident that we are going to heaven for eternity. Heirs of God and co-heirs with Jesus. That is incredible that we are heirs along with Jesus. If indeed we share in his sufferings, in order that we may also share in his glory. So, Jesus had a lot of sufferings. He was persecuted by tons of people. He was eventually put to death in the most painful way possible. And we're gonna have troubles too on this earth. It may not be as severe as being put to death for what we believe. In some cases, maybe. But it could be something like being laughed at school because you're a Christian. But if indeed we share in his sufferings, in order that we may also share in his glory. This is the point. James also talks about this. He said, let me see if I can find that. Yeah, James chapter 1. Blessed is the one who perseveres under trial, because having stood the test, that person will receive the crown of life that the Lord has promised to those who love him. If we stand firm in our faith, if we look to God, instead of finding our value in what others think about us, if we live for God, we have an inheritance with Jesus of eternal life with God, and nothing's going to take that away. And in the next few verses, he's going to talk more about the suffering and also about the glory of eternal life with God. Thank you guys all for watching. I'll be back tomorrow to talk about the next few verses. If you haven't already subscribed to our channel, make sure you do so you don't miss any future videos. If you have any questions about this, please leave them in the comments, and I will do my best to answer you. If you want to watch our last video, click right here. If you want to subscribe to our channel, click right here. Thank you guys all for watching. I'll see you tomorrow.